Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. God bless you all, and thank you so much for having me at the Republican Leadership Conference. It's truly an honor and a privilege to be back here in New Orleans. And when I was asked to speak at this conference, I thought about what single message could I bring? What would be a good depiction of where we are as far as leadership in this country, as far as leadership in this party? And I thought that this vignette, and I use the French word vignette since we're down here in New Orleans, because if I was from Georgia, I'd just say this scene. But this really shows where we are and what we have going on. Because there they were standing in 1297 as the Scottish were fighting their first war of independence. And this was the first of a major battle between the English army under Edward I and the Scottish army. And as you saw and as you remember this scene from this great movie, Braveheart, they were standing there and the English army came onto the field at Stirling, and the Scottish people saw them. And the Scottish nobles stood up and said, "Wait, men, do not flee, not until we had negotiated." And what did the Scottish army start to do? They started to run. They started to break up. They started to walk away. And then out of nowhere, there came this individual who had just recently won a little skirmish, a little conflict at a place called Scone. It was a raid operation. But his reputation had permeated all across Scotland, because all of a sudden there was a person that stood up against the English. And he came onto that field, and the nobles stood there and said, "You must pay homage." And he said, "I do not pay homage to you. I pay homage to Scotland." And then he gave the speech asking, "Why do you flee?" This is where we are today in the Republican Party. This is where we are today on that ideological battlefield, when we look across the battlefield and we see the Democrats on one side, and we believe that they are too many. We believe that they have people that are in this party that call themselves nobles. They call themselves an establishment, but they are not able to stand in front of this type of crowd, the grassroots, the people that are really important to make sure that we can once again win back our freedom. And so this great country, this great party must once again understand that it has to establish, it has to once again find a person that can stand up and truly be a leader, to stand up and take that mantle. Because just the same as the Scots stood and they looked across at the English army, and they were about to face their archers, they were about to face their heavy cavalry, they were about to face their infantry. Today we stand on an ideological battlefield where we look across and we see the Democrats, we see the left, we see the progressive socialists, we see the secular humanists, we see the radical Islamists. But will you run away? Will you flee? Will you not stand at this moment in time to fight for what is so sacred to us as American people, and that is our freedom? See, the cause on that day in 1297 is the cause still today. It is individual liberty. It is individual freedom. It is breaking away from tyranny. It is understanding truly that we want to be able to live our lives and determine our future. That is what that entire vignette was all about. Shall you run away and live under subjugation and tyranny? Or will you be able to stand and make that seminal fight for your freedom? See, that's what we have to come to understand in America, is what is leadership. You say that you are here at the Republican Leadership Conference. Well, I'm here to talk to you about what leadership is. I'm here to tell you what I believe leadership is, having been in the United States military for 22 years, having been on battlefields. There is no different from an ideological battlefield from a battlefield where bullets are flying. Because you can lose your life physically, or you can lose your life metaphysically and not live in freedom. That is the challenge that we face today. We face the challenge of raising up a new Braveheart. We face the challenge in understanding there are 5 parts of leadership. The first thing is courage. When you saw that vignette there, you saw a person that stood and was saying, I will stand with you. I will lead you. I will lead from the front, not lead from behind. I would be lying to you if I did not tell you sometimes it's difficult when you are demeaned, you are disparaged, you are denigrated, you are disrespected, you are demonized. You're called Uncle Tom, you're called Oreo, you're called sellout, you're called white man's porch monkey, you're called house Negro. But courage tells you to press on. Courage tells you that words cannot defeat you. And so I'm here to tell you today to stand up with courage, because the opposite of courage is cowardice. The opposite of courage is cowardice. The opposite of courage is standing up and saying, do not flee until we have negotiated. That's not inspiring. The opposite of courage is to say that we have red lines, and then when those red lines come to bear, you say, it's not my red line. It is everyone's red line. Cowardice, we saw that presented at the commencement address just recently at West Point. Standing before men and women who are about to go out and be the leaders of this great nation, about to go out and stand as part of the long gray line to show courage in the face of battle. See, courage means that you understand that you do have fears, but you never take counsel of those fears. That's the first and most important part of being a leader, is to show courage. The second thing is competence. Competence means that you have to be able to show proven skill and expertise. It means that you need to be able to stand up and tell the American people, why is it they can't afford to fill up their gas tanks? Why is it that in January of 2009, the average price of gas was $1.89? Look where it is today. Why is it that your wages are being depressed? Why is it that you used to be on full-time employment, but now you're on part-time employment? Competence means that you take very big, complex issues like making sure our veterans are not killed under the hands of the Veterans Administration. And you come up with solutions that you make sure you take care of the American people. You take care of the people that you have been entrusted to lead. That is what competence does. But the opposite of competence is conniving. It's to come up with vicious little schemes like shared prosperity and economic equality, hope and change, change we can believe in. We are the change we've been waiting for. Or this new one that I just heard from a person by the name of Hillary Clinton, the cancer of inequality. When you don't have the competence to articulate solutions to issues, when you can't stand there and command people to follow you, then you come up with gimmicks, you come up with tricks, you come up with the cute little trite sound bites. We must have competence in leadership in this Republican Party, because the American people are suffering. They're looking for a better way. They're looking for someone to come on the battlefield and say, rally around me. I will lead you to a better way. I will ensure that the promise of the United States of America will be kept for not just only you, but for your children and for your grandchildren. That is what leadership does. It is courage, it is competence, but it is also commitment. It is commitment to a core set of principles and values. When you think about how this country was established, you talk about limited government, you talk about fiscal responsibility, you talk about individual sovereignty, we talk about a free marketplace of ideas and a free market economy. Talk about a strong national defense. Those are the fundamental principles that you can go back and study the Declaration of Independence, the Federalist Papers, the U.S. Constitution. That's who we are. But when you don't have a commitment to your principal values, then you create confusion. Because no one really understands who you are. No one really understands what you are committed to each and every day of your life. We don't need people that want to go out and take a wind reading each and every day when they wake up to figure out which side of an issue that they're on. We cannot win as a GOP by trying to be a lesser version of the other side. We must create a clear and distinct delineation of who we are. When you stand for something, people understand it. When you're committed to something, people understand it. When you're not committed to anything, then people are confused. And that's the state of our party. That's also the state of our country. When Ronald Reagan stood up and talked about his morning in America, when Ronald Reagan stood up and ran against Jimmy Carter, it was a clear delineation between the malaise of Carter and what his vision was. What is our vision for America? We cannot be a party that when we're in control, we explode government. We cannot be a party that when we're in control, we spend money recklessly. We cannot be a party that stands up and says we don't believe in big government, but then we want to promote an education program like Common Core. We cannot be a party that believes in strong national defense, but then we want to talk about non-intervention. America is the global leader, and we need people to understand that, because if we don't, then we confuse ourselves. But what we do end up doing is we embolden our enemies. You must have commitment as a leader for this great nation. But not just commitment, but you have to have conviction, because when your principles are challenged, you can't run away from them. You can't stand up one day and say that I don't believe that raising the minimum wage is a good thing, and the next thing you know, you go on a different show and you say, well, I believe in raising the minimum wage. You have to be able to articulate to the American people why it's not a good idea. See, when people are convicted, as my mother taught me, that a man must stand for something or else he will fall for anything. There was a character in the movie Braveheart. It was the father of the supposed to be heir to the Scottish throne, Robert the Bruce. And he said, a man is defined by making compromise. But yet, when Robert the Bruce watched the character William Wallace, he said, there's something about him, Father. He fights with passion, and the people believe in him. That's what we have to have. That's what made the difference when that army came together on that field at Sterling and they rallied around Wallace, because he fought with conviction. He fought with passion. He made the emotional connection. And until we can make the emotional connection with the American people, and I'm not just talking about certain groups of American people, I'm talking about every American person. I'm talking about in the inner city, in the black community, in the Hispanic community, Asian Pacific community, whites, no matter what. We can make the connection if we stand with conviction, with a commitment to our principles and values, with a competence in understanding who we are, and a courage to never let go, to be relentless in the pursuit of restoring this great republic, to go on offense and not sit back on defense. Because this is what I will tell you about the word compromise. How many times did you hear the word compromise during the first 2 years of the Obama administration, when you had Nancy Pelosi as the Speaker, Harry Reid as the Senate Majority Leader? I never heard them say anything about compromise. But lo and behold, you let the grassroots, the constitutional conservatives, the Tea Party enabled the Republicans to win the House of Representatives in 2010. And then all of a sudden, all the news agencies are saying, well, those darn Republicans don't compromise. Well, I got a message to you folks up in Washington, D.C., all you pundits and everything. You don't compromise your convictions. No one asked liberal progressives to compromise their positions. So why must we acquiesce and compromise ours? You must be convicted. But most importantly, the fifth is you must have character. And what I was taught in the military is character means doing what is right when no one is watching. You all know the end of the story of Braveheart. It could have been very easy to, at that point in time, say what he was supposedly asked to say, to have that quick death. But he wouldn't do it. Brigadier General Jeff Miller, who was my commanding officer at Fort Bragg of the 18th Airborne Corps Artillery, said one simple thing that I will never forget. He said, leaders know what right looks like. But when you don't have leadership of impeccable character, then you have charlatans. And charlatans are just faux leaders They are based upon an image. They are based upon pop culture. They are based upon lies, deceit, coercion, intimidation, charisma, charm, but ultimately manipulation. We don't have leadership based upon character in our country. It definitely is not in 1600 Pennsylvania. Because if we had leadership based upon character in our country, Ambassador Chris Stevens, Sean Smith, Ty Woods, and Glenn Doherty would not have been abandoned to die in Benghazi. What difference at this point does it make? It makes a hell of a lot of difference. Thank you. Courage, competence, commitment, conviction, character. That's what you saw in that short 1-minute scene. That's what we need in the United States of America. And leadership will only come from this party. This party will produce a Braveheart for America. This party has to produce a Braveheart for America. It is this party's responsibility, just as the same that our first Republican president was Abraham Lincoln, who kept this union together in hard times. This party will produce another Braveheart. And what we must understand is that leadership cannot continue to be based upon whose turn is it next. Leadership cannot be based upon entitlement. Leadership cannot be based upon someone's perceived inheritance. Leadership has to be earned. Leadership cannot be based upon self or special interest. And we must not have any more leadership by nobles. We must have leadership by the people. And that is how we will make a difference in this country. I will tell you this, leadership unites. When you saw all of the clans there in 1297 on the battlefield of Sterling, leadership brought them together. We need to stop the circular firing squad on our side. We need to be united against the enemy that's on the other side of that ideological battlefield, against those liberal progressives, against those secular humanists, against those radical Islamists, and not taking the pop shots at each other that just enables them to continue the ruin, the road to perdition, the fundamental transformation of the United States of America. Our cause is individual freedom. Their cause is collective subjugation. So it's very simple. I see the sons and daughters of America gathered here today. And I ask you just one simple thing. Will you make the stand? Will you stand against those enemies that I have articulated to you, just the same as they made a stand in 1297 and they won that battle at Sterling Bridge? Will you stand against those progressive socialists, those secular humanists? Will you stand against the radical Islamists, all of those forces that are arrayed against you, all of the forces that are raised against this constitutional republic, against our liberties, against our freedoms, against our pursuit of happiness, against our way of life, against our American culture? Will you join me on this day and say that on this day and for all the days forward, that they will not take away the freedom of the greatest country that the world has ever known, these great United States of America? That is my challenge to you. It is the challenge of leadership to find your courage, find your competence, find your commitment, find your conviction, find your character, and ensure that you pass on that which is unique in America, the exceptionalism and the greatness of the country that we call home. God bless you all, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.